it's Kristen and it's time for another Feminist Friday. This Feminist Friday comes courtesy of my book club. I have a book club with some women who live in the same city as me, and every month we read a book, and we normally we'll throw out some suggestions and then we'll make a poll of those suggestions, and whatever gets the most number of votes is what we end up reading. And so this time we are reading The Lion Women of Tehran by Marjan Kamali. And I had heard of this, I'd heard the title and the cover does look familiar to me, but it's not one that I really knew anything about or necessarily had any intention of reading. But it is about female friendship and wanting more from your life. So I thought it could be an interesting one to do for Feminist Friday if I'm having to read it anyway. It's not one I own, but I am going to do it on audiobook. My dad did let me use one of his Audible credits because he's racked up a few. So I have started the book. This is what the synopsis says. In 1950s Tehran, 7-year-old Ellie lives in grand comfort until the untimely death of her father, forcing Ellie and her mother to move to a tiny home downtown. Lonely and bearing the brunt of her mother's endless grievances, Ellie dreams of a friend to alleviate her isolation. Luckily, on the first day of school, she meets Homa, a kind, passionate girl with a brave and irrepressible spirit. Together, the two girls play games, learn to cook in the stone kitchen of Homa's warm home, wander through the colourful stalls of the Grand Bazaar, and share their ambitions for becoming lion women. But their happiness is disrupted when Ellie and her mother are afforded the opportunity to return to their previous bourgeois life. Now a popular student at the best girls' high school in Iran, Ellie's memories of Homa begin to fade. Years later, however, her sudden reappearance in Ellie's privileged world alters the course of both of their lives. Together, the two women come of age and pursue their own goals for meaningful futures. But as the political turmoil in Iran builds to a breaking point, one earth-shattering betrayal will have enormous consequences. So that does sound interesting to me. I do love stories focused on female friendships. So I've listened to part 1 of the book already, which is basically their friendship, early years of them meeting and becoming friends, and as the synopsis said, learning to cook together and going to the bazaar. And there's been some really great descriptions of food, which just is very descriptive, sounds so good. A couple of the girls in the book club chat were all sharing recipes because they're we want to be able to taste this food, it sounds so good. So that's really nice. I love a food description in book that just sounds so tasty and cozy and comforting. So I enjoyed that, and yes, reached the point where Ellie is gonna have that opportunity to move away from the area that she currently lives in, which will mean moving away from Hama. So that's where I'm at. I really like Hama as a character. I think she's so interesting. As a child, I love that she's got big dreams for herself. She said she wants to be a lawyer and she wants to be a lion woman, and that women don't just have to be mothers, they can still be mothers if they want to, but they also can have jobs now, and isn't that great, and don't you want more from life, and just to be able to have opportunities. And Ellie's well, my mum says it's nice to not have to have a job, and she's kept in comfort to some degree, and that's good, and I want to be a mother, and women can't be judges anyway. She doesn't see Hummer's point to some extent, but I was like, but that is the point, like we need to wish for more and think that we can achieve more because we should be able to. And so I do like their discussion dynamic, but I am interested now to read a bit more and see like what's going to happen, because the book does initially open with Ellie as an adult receiving a letter from Hama, and then we sort of flash back and we hear the story of them meeting and becoming friends, etc. So I'm interested to hear more about like their later childhood and them sort of coming back together, and in what like context that happens, and like what has necessarily gone down between them, and what this earth-shattering betrayal is. So yeah, I'm listening on like 2x speed because that's what I tend to listen to audiobooks on, and I'm gonna like get some stuff done, some more stuff done around the house and continue listening. I have started quite late. My book club is tomorrow and I've just started the book today, but if I listen on 2x speed, it's saying that I should be done from now in like 4 hours. So yeah, get some more stuff done, and then if needs be I can continue listening tomorrow morning because we don't meet until the afternoon, so I do have time, and I don't want to be like completely just rushing through this book and not like taking anything in. But so far intrigued, like the character dynamics, I think the relationship is interesting, and I'm intrigued to see how things play out and where we go with the story. So gonna keep listening to The Lion Women of Tehran. So yesterday I got, I think like halfway through part 2 of the audiobook of The Lion Women of Tehran, and I've been continuing to listen this morning because my book club is this afternoon. So I've just been listening as I've like been doing stuff around the house and I've been like getting ready. I really like this book. It's so interesting to listen to. Obviously I've like now reached the point where the betrayal happens, and I think the betrayal is done so interestingly because it's sort of unintentional, and like the whole time that that scene was happening, it's not an immediate feeling of like, oh no, something's about to happen. It like lulls you into the scene, and then like as the conversation between Ellie and this other character is happening, you realise what's going on, but Ellie doesn't. And so she just like keeps talking and keeps answering questions, and I was just like listening to it going, shut up, stop talking, stop talking. And yeah, the conversation that happens leads to very horrible consequences for Hama, and she just goes through a lot as a character, Hama. It really tears apart their friendship for like a second time. Their friendship dynamic is so interesting because they become friends when they're younger and they like really love each other, and then just because of like moving away they separate, and then Homa comes back into Ellie's life again when she's a teenager. But there's this like interesting dynamic because Ellie at that point has sort of like reinvented herself a bit. She's made new friends, she's in a new school, she's popular, she's like quite cool and is very much like seen a certain way by the other students. And then Homa comes in, who is in a different social class to all these other characters, and Ellie sort of like doesn't want to acknowledge her past and her friendship with Homa, but at the same time also upon seeing her again is reminded like of how much she loves her as a person. And then they like grow up together again from like teen to early 20s, and then the sort of incident happens, and that just really sort of rips them apart. And then we get some chapters from Homa's perspective, and those are really like sad and frustrating to read because we see certain scenes from Ellie's perspective, and she's like, Homa doesn't want to talk to me, she wants me like out her house, we bumped into each other at the bazaar, and she like hates me now, and I should just like leave her alone because she doesn't want anything to do with me. But then we get Homa's perspective, and she's like, my life has just changed so much, but I still love Ellie, but we can't go back to the way we were, and I need to now like protect these other people in my life, and like there's just so much now that is different between us and unspoken. Like, how can we ever get past that, even though we do have this like immense love for one another? So that's really interesting. And then just Homa as a character is like, her bravery and her resilience as a character is just like, I'm sort of in awe of her as a character. She is getting involved in these like feminist movements in Iran, and I've reached the point now where we're in like the 70s edging into the 80s, rather than being in the 50s, 60s. So the country's going through like these big political changes, and she's like, there's chapters where she goes on like an International Women's Day march, and she and the other women face such horrible treatment by some of the men in the area, and she is just so protective of all these women around her, and in her internal monologue she just like wants so much for women and to be treated fairly, and I just think she is such an interesting character, and I'm still intrigued to see if they come back together, if Ellie and Homa reconcile in some way. I'm really I don't know, enjoying, because it is like intense and some pretty horrible things have happened to characters, but I'm really liking the book, and I think it's going to be such an interesting discussion to have later with book club. I'm also like just finding the cultural and historical stuff really interesting, because like I know a bit about Iran and their like politics and cultural stuff like now, but I don't know like the history of like what's happened in the country and how we've like reached the point of how the country is now politically. So I feel like I'm learning stuff, which is interesting. And I think I'm on part 5, or like I'm stopped just before part 5. I have like an hour and 20 minutes left of the audiobook, so I'm going to do that now. I may have to finish it off on the bus ride over to book club, but I'm going to listen to as much as possible now, then have some lunch before I leave, and then finish it on the way. I'm glad that this book, of like the options we last had for book club, was chosen, because I think it's one that I wouldn't have otherwise picked up. So I will, I guess, just finish it and let you know, and maybe I'll like check in after book club so I can also like share various other thoughts that people have had. But generally, based on like our WhatsApp group chat, people seem to be enjoying the book, so that's good. So yesterday I finished reading The Lion Woman of Tehran by Marjan Kamali, and then had my book club meetup for it. It was a really good book. I really liked it. I think I would give it like 4 stars. It was generally really well received at our book club. I think like everyone rated it between like 3.5 and 5 stars. It's one of the like generally best rated books that we've read. My only issue with it, and I think was like an issue that collectively several people had, was that the ending just felt a little bit rushed. There's scenarios that take us outside of Iran and characters traveling, and yeah, the last few chapters felt a little bit rushed. And then some people thought that the epilogue was unnecessary. There's like a present day epilogue at the end. I didn't find it unnecessary. I actually found it quite like emotionally affecting, because we see some of the characters that we've been following present day and how their lives have been and are still being affected by what is happening in Iran and like the follow through of the revolution that happened. And someone in the group said that that chapter wasn't originally in it, but because of everything that's, you know, been happening, continued to happen, but especially in the past few years, the author decided to add it on. So there is that epilogue set in, I think it was 2022. So yeah, but that was, yeah, quite an intense ending in like, in a hopeful way, and in one part of it you get like this sense of togetherness and community, and I think that's nice. But then the idea that like certain characters have been fighting for the same thing for their entire lives is just exhausting, and yeah, made me feel quite emotional. And I think I find it really interesting and such a strength of character, and resilience to be able to do that, be able to fight for your entire life for the same things, even when you're witnessing things getting worse, and, you know, not necessarily always having that determination throughout your whole life, going through huge ups and downs, because of like circumstances that happen, and the way that affects people just like logically and physically in how they can operate within their life when big changes happen, but also like mentally being able to get yourself to a place where you have the strength, the resilience, the determination to fight for something. I think Hama as a character is so interesting, and I did love, there's a point where she talks about how the thing that like brought her back into herself and got her to want to fight again was like reading and books and going to the library, and just like a thirst for like knowledge and wanting to learn stuff. And that was what like pulled her back into herself again and being the kind of person she wanted to be, and pushed her to care and fight and have this passion and feel a sense of power again. And I think that's incredible, because yeah, we were all talking at book club about how just generally like books, obviously we all think books are such important objects, items to have, and that we can read fiction books like this, but they can teach us stuff, and not in a like condescending, I'm an author and I'm teaching you about this thing kind of way, but just in like small descriptions or passing comments, you can really get a sense of a place or a people, and it doesn't need to be like reading non-fiction, it doesn't need to be reading fiction that really like spoon feeds you information or is like overly info dumpy, but you can learn through people's stories in like such an incredible way. And I think this book did a really great job at that. And yeah, I would read from Marjan Kamali again, because I really liked this, and the audiobook I thought was like a great production as well. But ultimately our favourite aspect, and I think like the most important, was the relationship between the women. I think like all the female characters are really interesting and nuanced, whether it's like a mother-daughter relationship or friendship, and like Hama's just protectiveness over everyone, but especially Ellie and then her daughter, and Ellie's willingness to take in Hummer's daughter because of horrible circumstances, but also this sense of guilt. And I just think it, yeah, such interesting dynamics, such interesting conversations between these women, and just how important they are in each other's lives, for better or for worse. And we all said it was an incredibly apt time to be reading this, given what is currently going on in Iran, and between the US and Israel, and all of the stuff that's been in the news recently. The day that we met yesterday was the day of the US-Israel missile strikes, and a girls' school ended up being destroyed, and many children died, and it felt quite jarring to be reading about this lovely friendship between these young girls, and all these, yeah, girls making friends and being kids and having these happy and sad childhood moments, and then hearing that news. But I'm glad I've read this and I have like more knowledge of the history of the country and more context for stuff. And like I said, you can learn about things even through reading fiction. But yeah, would definitely read from this author again. I've not read a historical fiction like this in a while, not read like a historical literary fiction, and I think I want to do more of that, and to read more books that are historical fiction that aren't like UK or US based. I definitely feel like need to continue to branch out, and book club definitely helps me do that. Again, like I said before, I wouldn't have picked this book up if not for book club, and I'm really glad I did, because I would highly recommend it. So that is it for this reading vlog, this Feminist Friday. Have you read this book before, or are you interested in reading it after seeing me talk about it? Do let me know in the comments below, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye.